So
What's
you want
up?
to do us first hour and then
Sure.
um um nuclear second?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay, unless you got something better.
No, I don't. Not right off
All
the top of
right.
my head, I don't.
All righty. In three, two, one. Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach along with Jason Spees. You can catch Jason with This Week in Energy Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. right here on Super Talk 1270. And Jason, I watched more news last night and I was absolutely enamored with the liberal side of coverage because I know where Fox is going to lie and some of the other and some of the nonpartisan ones because Fox is biased. I'll give them that. And, they just happen to be biased towards what I usually adhere to. But watching CNN, MSNBC, and the liberal side of mainstream media profess the utter abandonment and joy of what a great man's man, great human being, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is. I mean, this is the guy that bailed on his guard unit when they were going to get deployed as the highest ranking non-commissioned officer. This is the guy that would not call out the National Guard when St. Paul and Minneapolis were in the throes of BLM riots, and downtown Minneapolis is burning in a neighborhood that I watched because hell, back in college, I used to go down to that neighborhood and enjoy some of the music scene, and I watched that neighborhood reinvigorate itself, and it'll never be back. It'll never be back to what it was. And the tampon Tim. I mean, that was one of my favorite things. I mean, this is the guy that put tampons in boys' bathrooms in elementary schools, but he's the shining light and the balance to the ticket of Kamala Harris. I don't get it.
It's certainly some different times we're living in, that's for sure. I honestly I didn't think Tim Walz was going to be the nominee.
I
Um,
didn't either. And what I was watching and listening to and trying to figure out because um, whether you're left, right, center, doesn't matter. The the governor from Pennsylvania, he's got cred. They're touting him as the Jewish Obama, but that was the problem. The far left and the squad and the radical part of the Democratic Party was like, yeah, no, we're not having a Jewish running mate. I'm like, wait a minute. Identity politics? And I know the Democrats have gotten into the identity politics world forever. I mean, that's why Kamala's there. But when you've got somebody who's qualified, you've got somebody who's a rock star coming up in your party, and oh, wait a minute, maybe a little too moderate, but wait a minute, we're going to throw him under the bus and not consider him because of his religion. You know what? The last time that I really think about the Democratic Party or a party in general doing this over religion was after Kennedy. They said no more Catholics.
yeah, I
Like,
remember that.
or we're going to be really quiet about it, or not really strong, good practicing Catholics because it goes against the abortion and Planned Parenthood, and so we're going to sweep that under the rug. I mean, that's the last example I can think of, Jason, that identity politics, when it comes to religion, really played a role in politics in America.
It's an interesting take because one of the reasons that people did not want to vote for Kennedy was because of his affiliation to the Pope. Because he was Catholic, there were many people that thought his first representation would be to the Pope, not to the
Yeah, first
American
allegiance, not
Constitution.
America.
Yes, that is allegiance. Yes, and so that was kind of going into the election. But you're right. Afterwards, and some of the policies, yeah, that was, it's kind of funny because Lyndon Johnson was, he was appointed, and I don't think he won again. I think when people were appointed, they don't win their reelection.
Well, he didn't
Or
run. He had
yeah, he
health
didn't run.
issues, and his wife said, "No, you're not going to run again." So that was a lot of people talk about the Vietnam War and a lot of other. It was he had some health issues, and his wife said no. That's why Lyndon Johnson did not run for a term
And
after
so,
the Kennedy assassination.
back then it was more about religion mixed in with politics. We have to separate church from state. Church from state. That was what we that was always our thing growing up. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got
Yeah,
to separate church from state. Even when I worked for the newspaper, when the editorial staff and sales staff would be in different areas because we had to separate church from state. That's what they would always say. Editorial was either church or state, and the sales force was either church or state. The point is that you have different ideologies. You might be on the same team, and it might seem like you're working in the same place, but how you get there is completely different. And when we fast forward to today, as you were talking about Tim Walz, as you were talking about Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris is a checkbox candidate. Okay. She is the DEI, the ESG candidate, the diversity, inclusion, equity, or equality candidate, is the environmental social governance candidate. They essentially are the same thing. And so what I'm talking about here, Steve, is that now it's almost like they don't talk about religion anymore. We have politics ruining everything. We have politics that have ruined science. We can't even identify what a man or woman is anymore because of politics in science. We can't identify what climate change is. It global warming? Is it global cooling? Is it climate change? What is it? It's political. So when you take a look at almost in the marketplace, in the free market, just in North Dakota alone, between Governor Doug Burgum and how he's run the state, how Senator Hoeven and his corrupt group has run the state, and how commerce has run, politics has ruined the free market. I I can't believe I'm going to say this. Politics has ruined politics. That's what's happened, Steve. They've
you're
actually
not
made
wrong.
politics political, and they've ruined it. It's no longer based on merit. It's no longer based on who's the best candidate. I mean, this I when Kamala Harris was announced as the nominee, I don't know if she's actually the nominee yet, but when they started announcing her as it, I literally thought this was going to be the Ronald Reagan, Walter Mondale election, that Kamala might win one state, and that one state might be Minnesota. And then she went and picked Tim Walz. I'm still standing by my pick.
You know, if you take a look at the track record with Walz, and you take a look at the gender identifying pieces and the anti-fossil fuel, because apparently electric cars run in Minnesota. Um, we know they don't work in the winter in North Dakota, but apparently they work in Minnesota. Um, could you imagine being up in the up in the northern tier of Minnesota when
Could
it's
you imagine trying to
45
pull
below?
anything? Could
Yeah,
you
it's
imagine
just
trying to pull anything out of the, out of the ditch in Minnesota? Your
oh,
cyber truck would bend in half. Have you seen
but
those videos of the cyber truck trying to pull things out? It
oh, it
yanks the
doesn't work.
axle right out. I
Yeah.
mean, these are not
Well,
built well.
don't even get me started on trying to take everybody's fingers off because that system doesn't work. Um, but when you're comparing candidates, and I haven't even gotten into the Chinese side of stuff yet because he basically has lived in China. He's been over 30 trips to China and groomed by the Chinese. I mean, he makes no bones about that they're our friends. And you're looking at trying to shift American manufacturing jobs to what is, without a question, the dirtiest economy globally, from somebody who professes to be green and we need green energy and clean environment and anti CO2 and all that. And then you want to shift jobs and manufacturing over to the dirtiest economy because they don't have clean coal. They don't have clean natural gas like we do here in this country. Uh, Somebody needs to hit the brakes here and go, wait a minute. We've got Bernie Sanders light running with Kamala Harris, who is, I won't even say that she's a liberal in the far left sense. She's just up for the highest bidder. It's like, where where does my allegiance lie? Well, who do I need to repay? Who do I need to repay the debt to that got me wherever I'm at? And that's the biggest problem with what's going on, because you're right, Jason. You are 100% right. They've ruined politics. It's just like,
by making it political.
by
Right.
making
I
it
know.
political. Well, what do I say all the time? Things get screwed up when agendas get hijacked by politics. Leave political agendas out of issues, and you're going to have a better outcome. And now they've done that with politics. And I, I just,
Well, it's because
I'm worried. I'm
politics
worried.
politics has become dirty. It's
It has.
become dirty pool. It's
Absolutely.
become absolute backroom. What's that old oh the hall, the shoot. I
Oh, the
can't
pool
remember it.
hall
We'll have to think
back
of it
behind
after
the.
the what's
All right,
that?
we're up against a break. Hey, think about that, and we'll come back. This is Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach, along with Jason Spiess on Super Talk 1270. What are you thinking in the back room?
I gotta look it up quick here.
Okay.
What was this guy's name again? Yeah, Tammany Hall. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Go
Do you
ahead.
want
Yeah,
to?
when we come back, I'll talk about Tammany Hall. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll describe what it is.
Okay. Yeah, we get another segment on this, I think. So, all right. In
We got
three,
three left. So
yeah, 3, 2, 1. Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Boggan along with Jason Spiess. You can catch Jason Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. right here on Super Talk 1270 with This Week in Energy, a little bit of ESG University, a little bit of the Crude life, and a whole lot of other things that you want to find out about what's going on in the world of energy without it being ruined by politics, because Jason does a really good job of not doing that. It's this agendas, Jason, when they get politicized, they always go off the rail. It's a formula that's got failure written all over it. And like you said, pulling it out of the back room.
So the name I was trying to remember was Tammany Hall. Tammany, Tammany Hall. I remembered the hall and I remember the Tam part, but it's Tammany Hall. And basically it was one of the first like grafters that had like a political machine. So you talk about the Clinton machine, you talk about the Hovind machine. Tammany Hall was like one of the first ones, and it was in New York, and it was Aaron Burr was a part of it. Do you remember Aaron Burr?
Oh yeah.
I think he was the one who got killed in a duel, right?
Yeah, it was the duel. He was the duel
Yeah.
guy.
So Tammany Hall was
Which there was a
grafting
really
and
funny
corrupt
commercial off of
politics.
that
Yeah.
with peanut butter. So it's kind of funny. Google it. It's funny. But yeah, and that goes back to the New York politics, the big city Eastern politics.
Without a doubt. And then, you talked about Chicago politics last week, and then we talked about North Dakota politics, and it's the same. It's the same. I mean, just last week there was a $980 million grant given to energy companies, right? So the same two energy companies turned down a loan for $125 million because this way they get free money that they don't have to pay back.
And they were
And
sizable. I saw the article you wrote about that, and I'm like, wait a minute.
but
And actually, I want to
when
talk about that a little bit in
when you
coming
when you
up.
look at this, when you think about the 6 carbon deals that were done, and you think about this hydrogen deal that they're moving forward on, and now they keep talking about some nuclear stuff, and they are pushing Dwayne Sand right out of the way, and we're going to have him up in the next hour reaffirming how he's been trying to get nuclear going in the state for about 20 years.
Yeah, him and
So
I were having that conversation on a different radio station in the energy space back to 2011, 2012. I mean, we were talking about why does North Dakota not have nuclear? And for somebody who was a captain on a nuclear powered submarine, sub driver, worked for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission as an inspector and going through the permitting, we have got such a hidden gem in North Dakota, but Dwayne falls politically on the fringe.
no, it
They
doesn't. That's not even it anymore. That's not it
he's
anymore,
not
Steve. No, I'm going to
part of
stop
the
you right there. I'm going to
okay.
stop you right there. Dwayne Sand is a Navy man. He served his country. He's an entrepreneur. He's just not in the Hoven Club. He's just not in the Bergam Club. And so if you're not in their club, you are fringe, you are crazy, you are
Right.
easily dismissed. And then they're going to steal your idea and totally just defame your character and talk smack about you, so that way nobody will help you. And then they're going to go get government money to go do what you've been trying to do, and they're going to take your intellectual property with them.
Or
These
what
are
you would have
very
done as a
corrupt
private
people.
investor with your own private investment funds and not on the taxpayer dime. You
Yeah,
would have
that's what
done a
bankers do.
good, yeah, you'd
So
have done a good project with your own funds, and that's legitimate business.
yeah, this is an old school banker trick, which Hoven knows really well because he's a predator. Predator in power. He's one of those bankers that he waits for you to get sick. He waits for you to have cancer. He waits for you to be a single parent, and then he takes advantage of you. So this is what bankers do. Bankers go to the country club, and this maybe not all bankers, but this has been around since the days of the railroad and before. It's been around since the Tea Party and et cetera, et cetera. This is why bankers have this reputation. They go to the country clubs, they go to the churches, they go to the places, and they give out free toasters. They give out free cookies. They're always giving you things until you are in trouble. And as soon as you're in trouble with their friends at the country club and their rich friends at the church and their rich friends at the private clubs, they come in and lowball you. They come in and take advantage of you when you're down. And that's been going on for hundreds of years. And that's what I'm saying. So this is not exclusive to Hoven. This is just what John Hoven has done to people. This is what Doug Burgum does to people. And so this is why I say they're using commerce, and they're using the Department of Human Health Services, that newly combined one that Chris Jones combined before he left, the Department of Parks and Rec that they started, all these other government entities that they started, WAS, the Western Area Water Supply. These are economic weapons to help the bankers and Senator Hoven and Doug Burgum's investors. Take a look at WAS, a public-private water company that took away water rights from North Dakota citizens so that the state could sell to Harold Hamm and Continental Resources,
Well, we
not
were
the
just talking
private
about
landowners.
we were just talking about Dwayne Sand, and he's got a water business out in the
That's
oil
right.
patch.
Dwayne Sand's got a water business. I forgot.
Yeah, but he had to fight long and hard to try to protect what his private business was against WAS and against all these government funded projects that were cutting into private entrepreneurial businesses.
And look what's happening to the people who are trying to fight Carbon Summit Solutions just because they want more information, because State Farm Insurance will not insure their property if there's a carbon pipeline going through. Doug Burgum doesn't care. Senator Hoven doesn't care. Justin Buckingham was on this program, who's John Hoven's neighbor, and he says that John Hoven ducks every time he drives by Justin's house. So a ghost car, that's Senator Hoeven right there, a coward, a person who ducks and then sends in a bunch of people to eminent domain your property. That's what we're talking about here, Steve. This is the type of values that's happening. This is the type of system that's happening. So this is a predatory practice that is now normal in North Dakota. This is unbelievable. My question is do the people of North Dakota not care? Do they not know? Does Sandy Sanford not care as the
get into
head
that
of the
next.
Republican Party? Does she not care?
That brings up an interesting question because, we're talking a little bit about Democrats. We're talking about Republicans here in North Dakota, or at least in name only. But that's a great question. I want to touch base with that when we come back from the break. I'm Steve Bachman along with Jason Speech. You can catch Jason on the Crude Life or This Week in Energy Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. right here on Super Talk 1270. All right, 3, 2, 1. Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bachman along with Jason Spees. You can catch Jason with This Week in Energy Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. right here on Super Talk 1270. And going into the break, you brought up an interesting question. You posed an interesting. We started out this hour talking about Minnesota Governor Tim Walz being Kamala Harris's vice presidential running mate.
And you brought up a good point about his military service, because according to people in his platoon or his troop or whatever was in the Iraq War, I forget what the actual specific name was, a battalion or whatever.
When they got deployed, he bailed.
Yeah, as soon as the gunshots went, he ran. He ran and got the heck out of there. And keep in mind, he did get a DUI going 90 some miles, 95 miles an hour in a 55 or 65. And his blood alcohol was 1.2. So he does have a little bit of a criminal past, but I don't think people care about that anymore. I really don't, because politics has ruined politics.
So that's where we started having that conversation. By the way, just, it's funny because the liberal media sources are like, oh, they're just trying to swift boat him. It's like, no.
They're bringing up the swift boat.
They're bringing up the swift boat. They're just trying to swift boat him. It's like, okay, but when his unit members are coming out going, that SOB ran. He wasn't here to support us. He wasn't here as a leader. He didn't, and he was the highest ranking NCO in his unit, and he bailed on his men. He bailed on his troops. Where's the leadership in that? And they're the ones that are calling him out. So I found it rather amusing, the swift boat analogy that coming from the media, coming from the liberal press. So, but we started with that. And then we got into the larger scope of politics. And we talked about the gaslighting with the New York politics and the Illinois politics and North Dakota politics. The one we didn't bring up last week when we were talking about that was the Getty family and California politics, where they've had everything laid out for 70 years. Well, you take a look at the Hoeven secession plan in North Dakota. Wow, that's not dissimilar. Let's map out where we need to go for the next 40 years, because who wants to be in power? Who wants to be in control? Now, you brought up an interesting point, because do North Dakotans care? Are North Dakotans just throw their hands up and give up? What's going on in North Dakota politics? Because now you take a look at the dirty New York politics and the dirty Illinois politics and the dirty California politics, which are all liberal Democratic politics. And then you take a look at the dirty Republican, or at least Rhino politics going on in North Dakota. And you talk about a snow job. You talk about voters and residents and taxpayers having the wool pulled over their eyes, because you've got the same thing going on here. Just swap a letter behind somebody's name. And with all these under the table deals, all of these dirty politics, all of these situational, because how can I make money games that are being played in North Dakota, and they're coming from the other side. I've said this for a long time. Super majorities never benefit anybody. They don't benefit the taxpayers. They don't benefit the residents. They don't benefit the voters, because super majorities eliminate the ability to have a conversation. And I'm conservative and I like a conservative majority, but this super majority, when you're letting in for the sake of having an R, we're not even going to discuss what that R stands for, but letting in Republicans, you missed my air quotes here because we're on the radio, but Republicans, for the sake of, well, we're going to stick an R behind their name because that's going to strengthen our supermajority. But yeah, you're watering down my platform because you're letting in people who really don't stand for conservative platforms. They just stick an R behind their name because, hey, it feels good to have an R behind your name and be on the winning team. Supermajorities don't benefit anybody. We're supposed to, as a representative republic, our entire governmental system was set up to have a conversation.
So the reality
we're not there.
The reality is that Senator John Hoeven was a Democrat. Okay. He was a Democrat that turned Republican to become governor. And then he grew the governorship more than got the governor's office in the state of North Dakota government more than anybody else in the history of North
until
Dakota.
Burgum.
Until Burgum, right?
Until Burgum.
We will get to Burgum. We're on Hoeven right now. So when you take a look at Senator John Hoeven, he really, a Democrat has been in office since Senator John Hoeven, because everything he has done, I'm talking about his actions, not what he says, not what the big fornicator and Rumpelberger does for him. Those PR pit bulls he has that use state money in order to gaslight the public and confuse the public on Senator Hoeven. If you take a look at Senator Hoeven's voting record on energy, for example, he comes in last for the Republicans. He has like a 76%. So he's on the lower end of Republicans nationally when they vote. And when you take a look
I have a question for you.
Hang on, but Steve, Dalrymple.
When you finish, I have a question for you when you finish.
So Hoeven and Dalrymple were the same. And look at what they did to the government. They completely changed it. They grew it. And they changed the banking laws to the tune to where many people believe the Bank of North Dakota is just now a mini Federal Reserve.
It is.
Now, and I know we're up against the clock, so I'll come up to Burgum here because we'll talk about Burgum in the next segment. Burgum did exactly the same thing. He was a Democrat, used his money, his family influence, just like Jack Hoeven and John Hoeven. They used their family name, their family money, in order to gaslight and confuse the public on their political affiliation. Burgum, like Hoeven, are Democrats that ran as Republicans and won, and then they went on to do Democrat governing. That's undeniable. Now, you can disagree
the problem
with me.
Burgum, though, is he's not a Democrat. He's a globalist.
Yeah, but he's a Democrat. He's a Democrat. Yeah. He is.
A globalist ilk.
A Democrat we are up against the break,
and I have a question for you when we come back.
Yeah.
Because, again, going back to the question of, are North Dakotans just snowed, despondent, throwing their hands up in the air, don't understand what's going on? A lot of different opportunities here to explore different areas. We're going to come back to that when we come up against the break. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. 3, 2, 1. Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken along with Jason Spees. You can get Jason with This Week in Energy Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. right here on Super Talk 1270. All right, Jason, you brought up some interesting points, and my question to you is, and North Dakota's painted as a red state. I have a hard time saying that it is nowadays.
It's not. It's not.
But But go back to the history of North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
And North Dakota has always been painted as conservative, but we've got a socialist bank. We've got a socialist mill and elevator. Go back to the days of Byron Dorgan and Earl Pomeroy and Kent Conrad, and this conservative state always sent liberals to Washington because where's my pork? A lot of it was ag. It was bringing back ag dollars. It was
It was
pork.
more than that. It was technology. It was
Well,
alien technology, and the wind turbines, DMI, and gem cars.
pork.
No, there was a lot. There was a lot. And Steve, what you're
So,
talking about is very true because um,
so
the
my question to you
Republicans
though
didn't
is,
the
but my
Republicans
question
didn't
to
want to
you,
get they didn't want to get pigeoned by bringing back $1.80 for every dollar they sent in.
okay,
Okay.
so my question is, if that's the history of North Dakota, how conservative is North Dakota?
Let me ask you
Because
this, Steve. Define conservative. How is John Hoeven conservative? And I'm being totally serious. I'm not being snarky. So if you're listening
my
out there
definition
and
of conservative,
you
my
know Mikey
definition.
Hoeven, you know John Hoeven, you know
Yep.
the pig fornicator, you know Ronald Rumpelberger, if you know any one of them, I'm being totally serious. I'm not being snarky. How is John Hoeven conservative?
My definition of being conservative: less government, less regulation, less taxes, less,
Okay,
and
so
leave people the hell alone. Now,
so that's fine.
that's old school Republican. That's
Hold on,
old school conservative
hold
values.
on, Steve, hold on. When John Hoeven was governor, he grew the government more than anybody, but he was a conservative because he used religion, because he used values. He would, North Dakota was a very religious state. For crying out loud, 20 years ago, there were still blue laws on the books, Steve. Okay? Maybe it was 30 years ago. My point is
Not
that
even.
North Dakota has been a religious, conservative state. And people like John Hoeven and Pat Finken and Ronald Rumpelberger and the other Democrats, even Burgum in his first run, they would use the Lord in order to pass along their conservativeness. And to me, that is absolutely unconscionable to do that. It's also breaking commandment number 2, thou shalt not use the Lord's name in vain, because you're not supposed to profit off of using the Lord's name. Like, for example, you're not supposed to bring in Tim Tebow's mother to go preach to everybody on how great of a conservative religious state North Dakota is, just so you can go and abuse people and use commerce as an economic weapon, for example. So what I'm telling you, Steve, is that this group of Republicans used religion and values as a way to market themselves as conservative. Why do you think John Hoeven put up a billboard right before the last election when Rick Becker had him up against the ropes? Because Rick Becker was going to beat him. They had to pull out some dirty shenanigans in order to beat Rick Becker at the convention. And before that, John Hoeven took out a billboard right outside of Bismarck, and him and Mikey were on the billboard because Senator Hoeven wanted to remind his base he's a man of values. That's why he's married. He should have just put a big logo of Ide Bailey up there with some knee pads. That would have showed his true colors. Honestly, Steve, this is out of hand. This is out of hand.
You spark something here that I want to ask you about, because yes, you're right, clinging to religion. And we've talked about a former across town radio host who's based out of Fargo that clings to his faith. And it's false. It's truly false. It's for the dollars. Now, you notice something when the globalist Doug Burgum was running for president.
Yeah.
There was no reference to God. There was no reference to country. It was different. What's changed?
Environment. It was environment he kept mentioning. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The cult of climate change.
Yeah. And so when you take a look at what's happening is in the same way that this group has shifted against landowners, because remember, North Dakota used to be about protecting landowners. Now, North Dakota is about calling landowners terrorists if they don't agree with Senator Hoeven and his investors, and Doug Burgum and his investors. So if you don't agree with Harold Hamm, you're now a terrorist. That's what North Dakota is telling you if you're a landowner. And so that's a change. That's a change of values. They no longer value property rights. They say they do, but only on their terms. Same thing. Values, same thing. They've shifted values away from. That's why I keep calling out Sandy Sanford. I've never met Sandy Sanford. I have no idea anything about her. The only thing I know about her is she likes to use the Lord for marketing. She likes to pretend that she's a person of faith. But when I take a look at all the actions, I don't see one thing that she's done that's actually of value. During COVID, I didn't hear any Republican leader come out for the churches. Instead, they forced the churches to shut down, but they allowed Walmart and Lowe's to stay open. Okay. So you're saying churches are not essential, but Walmart and Lowe's are. Okay. Well, I don't agree with you, but apparently the Republicans did because they all stood by the side. When Doug Burgum came out as president and announced his candidacy, he didn't mention the word God once, which is unusual. I don't care that he didn't. I don't care. But when you market yourself that you're a person of faith in order to get elected, and then you use it as a marketing chip and turn your back, well, I got a problem with that. It's about consistency. It's about public trust. And if you can use the Lord's name in order to profit, well, that isn't anybody I want to trust at all. So the fact that Sandy Sanford didn't come out and challenge Governor Burgum on that speech says a lot about her. It says a lot about her leadership, that I don't think that faith and Christianity and having some sort of value system is very important to Sandy Sanford and the Republican Party, because their members keep breaking those things. They went on.
Well,
There's one guy up.
again, that comes back to the other question, though, is the Republican Party of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago is definitely not the Republican Party of today. And that's why there's a grassroots movement to try to take the party back. And so far it's being successful.
Steve,
we're up against the break, but
I know. Yeah, I know. But it's sad because if you want to say a prayer now, the same people that use the Lord to get elected will now shame you.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're up against the break. Next hour, great interview with Dwayne Sand talking about nuclear and why does North Dakota, Jason, not have nuclear power? We profess to be this all of the above. You look at the money that they're spending on the hydrogen hub and Project Tundra and CO2 this and sequestration that and commerce spending water like drunken sailors at the behest of the governor. But what about nuclear? We'll find out more coming up next hour. You can catch Jason Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. with This Week in Energy right here on Super Talk 1270.